This video is sponsored by Clean My Mac X. So it's been a month since I bought the MacBook Air with the M1 chip in it. And as a full-time, lifetime Windows user, what do I think about it after a month? Now, this is actually my third video about having this particular laptop. I actually did one where I unboxed it and just kind of messed around with it. I did one where I tried to figure out the operating system itself. I'll leave links for those in the description below. You guys really seem to enjoy those, especially when Justine dropped by unexpectedly. Listen, at the end of the day, those two videos are great. I think if you want to have some fun, make sure you check those out. But I want to tell you about what I think about actually having this for a month, using it, and kind of giving you my final thoughts on it. Like, is this something that you should get? Is it something that I should have got? That's actually a really complicated answer. Or maybe it isn't. But I'll tell you all about it right after this.
This is, you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back. And for all you new people, welcome. My name's Travis and I do tech videos every single week and have a blast doing them. If that sounds like fun to you, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Anything I talk about will be in the description below, but for now, let's just get into the video. We're about ready to hit a nice subscriber goal, so let's go ahead and hit that subscribe button at the bottom here. Let's get us to that next goal because, you know, we gonna party. We gonna party like it's on sale for $19.99. The MacBook Air. This is a laptop that didn't always have the best reputation, at least the ones that came out before. But when the M1 chip was introduced and they put it into a MacBook Air, it became one of the most recommended laptops in the last couple of months. Now, there's a tremendous amount of reasons for that, and I'll talk a little bit about it and my experience with that as well. But the reality is this. This was not a very popular laptop, at least among tech reviewers, until the M1 chip was put into it, which is why I purchased it. All of those reviews kept gushing over it and talking about how amazing it was. And as someone who's used a lot of Windows laptops, I was kind of curious what it was like to have a MacBook. So I decided to get one. Now, primarily, I was going to use this for video editing. I currently video edit, or at least have been video editing for the last year and a half on my iPad Pro. And that's been an amazing, amazing scenario for me. Very quick, very fast. I love it. But I also wanted to be able to grow into editing using Final Cut. And that's only on a Mac of some sort, either be in like an iMac or a MacBook here. And knowing that the M1 would actually be able to handle 4K footage super easily, it just seemed to make sense. And battery life promises also sound pretty good. I just figured I'd try something new and share that experience with you guys. And you guys and gals really seem to like those videos when I did that. But there's been a lot been going on since that those first couple of videos. And I just want to share some of the things that I found as a Windows user using a MacBook. Number one for me, finding things sometimes can be difficult on this thing. Obviously, the file structure is different. And while not everything is bad, there is something called a finder. When you're used to looking for things just by hitting the Windows button on a Windows laptop or computer and typing in what exactly you need, it just, I don't know, it comes second nature. It's not that difficult to find things on a MacBook, but for example, when I want to find my network, like my network drive on this thing, bro, I spent like 10 minutes looking for that thing the other day. And the only way I could figure out how to get to it was by opening up Final Cut, because there's a way you can import stuff. It's a little ridiculous. Now, yes, are there ways of perhaps putting a drive on your desktop? Sure, I'm sure people in this video are going to go down in the comments below and tell me exactly how to do it. And that's fine. But the reality is I'm coming over from Windows and it just wasn't intuitive for me. And the reason why that's important is because for the first time ever, a MacBook is actually being promoted by a lot of tech reviewers as the laptop to buy over almost anything else. Battery life, power, performance, everything about this thing makes you say, hey, for $1,000 or sometimes less, depending on how you get it, this is the laptop to beat. So for me, coming from Windows, things like being able to find my network drives and kind of understanding what the file structure was is still something that I struggle with to today. Now, I don't use this every single day. I do use it for my video editing and then occasional browsing. And that's been pretty good. But there's some caveats with that as well. But let me just continue on with the other things. Closing windows that don't necessarily close the program. Like, I don't understand this at all. First of all, let's start with closing windows. I'm used to closing windows using the top right X on any Windows-based machine. You know, the minimize, close, everything's on the right-hand side. Everything's on the left-hand side. Okay, you got to think different, I suppose. But again, coming from Windows, it's so weird to me. Now, this, again, is a problem, as far as I'm concerned, is because you're going to have a lot of people trying a Mac for the first time and trying to get over these little humps, in my estimation, is a bit of a pain. But again, okay, it's a small thing. But why is it when I hit the X that doesn't necessarily close the program? Like, what? Like there's a minimize button and then there's like an X, and the X doesn't necessarily close the program. Then what the heck is the X for? Why? Tell me in the comments. I know you're gonna have a good explanation for this, but when I hit the X, I want the program to go away. Out of RAM, out of everything. Like, go away. Downloading and installing programs is a little different too. You actually saw me do this in one of my videos earlier, and the dragging it over to the app folder thing as part of an install process still seems kind of weird to me, but it does work once you get used to it, once you understand what's going on. I suppose that's okay. Again, Mac does things different, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is a bit of a barrier when you're coming from Windows. I wonder if it would make sense for Apple to have some type of, like, I don't know, white glove way to get someone who's from Windows into Mac OS. Like maybe something that pops up and goes, hey, if you're coming over from Windows, do these things. Because I believe they're actually going to sell a bunch of these to people who've never had Macintoshes before of any kind. Now, one of the main reasons I bought this was to be able to edit my videos here on my channel, and using Final Cut's been really interesting. Now, I'm still substantially slower on Final Cut than I am on LumaFusion, which is on my iPad. Now, luckily with the M1, I can use LumaFusion, an iPad app, here on my laptop, but I'm not going to do that because for me, doing it on the iPad just is better with the touch. Having said that, this isn't exactly the experience I was expecting. For one, rendering the files and actually exporting them isn't any faster really than my iPad Pro. I was actually expecting this to be faster. It's fast, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't appear to be any faster. Plus, it's a little bit more complicated and I'm much slower in Final Cut. So from that perspective, it hasn't really been worth me transitioning over. And in addition, Final Cut does something really weird. Now, when I import a file from my camera into like my iPad, let's say it's 10 gigs, and then I edit the file and I render it out, my final thing might be like 2 or 3 gigs, my final video, right? Because the video that I shoot is longer than the video that you guys and gals see. Final Cut does all these special things by default, so that when I import a 10 gig file, I have a project file that's over 100 gigs. Now, I have a 256 gig hard drive. That means I can essentially get one full edit in on this thing before it goes ham. Shout out to Renee Ritchie, who told me how to turn off those settings to make these extra files. But the M1 doesn't need that. Like the M1 doesn't need all of these extra proxy files and such to make it run better. That's actually the whole purpose of me buying this. It's also one of the purposes for me not buying a larger hard drive, because I just figured I'm only going to do a couple of small programs at a time. Imagine my shock when I've done one single project and it's almost 200 gigs of video footage. I don't like that. Now, you can say that's the program's fault or that's some settings you can change, and that is true. But again, it's an experience I had my first time through. So it did cloud my experience. I have since changed those settings. It's much more reasonable now. But still, the problem remains it's no more efficient, at least for me, currently, than using LumaFusion. In the future, I may grow into it. We'll see. Now, fortunately for huge files, there is Clean My Mac X, which absolutely helped me out. Thank them for sponsoring this video. Let me tell you exactly how they're going to help you as well save on those extra big files on your MacBooks.
Clean My Mac X is an all-in-one cleaning and optimizing software for your Mac. It gives your system a scan to detect outdated junk files and lets you see exactly what takes valuable space by building a virtual map of your Mac storage called Space Lens. Clean My Mac X is more than just a Mac cleaner. It doesn't show you the files you already know you have. It deep scans your Mac for temporary files and app leftovers that aren't so easy to find manually. Clean My Mac X is created to help users manage their free space more effectively. The System Junk feature detects old user and cache files that are no longer needed, lets you delete them. Clean My Mac X recently rolled out native support for the Apple Silicon Macs and got an entirely fresh new look. Download a free trial in the link below, and thanks to Clean My Mac X for sponsoring this video.
Now, the touchpad on this thing is actually really good, but I ended up buying one of my favorite mice of all time, the MX Master 3. This is a ridiculously good mouse, no matter what kind of computer you have, whether it be Windows or Mac or whatever. You definitely should pick up one of these. I'll probably leave a link in the description below. This thing is amazing, just incredible. But really, you almost don't need it with this thing. The touchpad on a laptop, generally speaking, unless you're spending a lot of money, is trash. But on this thing, it's really good. And there's even some gestures and some other cool things you can do with it. I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised by that. Had no expectations that the touchpad would be something I would ever want to use, but it's kind of nice. Now, I'm sure if you've been watching YouTube videos, you know about the SSD issue with these because it uses a kind of universal RAM. I have 16 gigs of RAM on here. where you know, it's sharing the RAM, and then when you run out of RAM, it uses your SSD. Listen, I'm not worried about that. If you continue to look into that problem, what you will find is it's kind of overblown. There were a couple of reports early that said that you're going to run through your SSD quicker than you would any other laptop because Mac OS is using your SSD. Listen, if you really do the research, if you're using your laptop a lot, and I mean a lot, every single day, you may see an issue 8 or 9 years from now. If you don't believe me, I mean, really look up the information. It's out there. It's not really a problem. And considering I don't even use this thing every day, there's no way I'm going to go through my SSD on this thing long before I'm ready to upgrade to the next version of this, if I decide to do that. Now, while it is cool that it has 2 USB-C ports, that's the only thing it has. And at first I wasn't sure if it would bother me. I did buy a little dongle that I can use with this thing. And that's kind of a pain in the butt, I'm not gonna lie. I too now am on board with putting more ports on this thing. You have a laptop to take it places, you don't have to bring a dongle as well. And especially me, when I use my SD cards out of my camera, I don't want to have to bring a dongle out too to put it in here to edit. I don't want to do all that. Apple, come on. The battery life is, of course, really good, and for a laptop, it's excellent. And for a laptop at this price point, right around $1,000, well, a little bit more with 16 gigs of RAM, it's really, really good. Like, I've had a lot of laptops that have been of different prices, and rarely do they get the battery life of this. Like, now, again, when I'm mostly using this to edit my videos, so I'm doing 4K footage pretty much the entire time this thing is on, whenever it's on, and I can do multiple videos, 3 or 4 videos like that at a time. There's no way I would be able to do that on a Windows-based laptop around this price point or cheaper. There's just not enough battery life to them. There just isn't. Now, of course, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, there's a bunch of things you can do as well. I actually made a video about that. I'll make sure to leave a link in the description or on the end screen or something. Make sure you watch that video, because it is kind of a problem to be locked in the Apple ecosystem, but when you start adding more and more hardware to it, it just sinks you in even more, and it just becomes more of a pleasure to use. So in some ways, when you're buying a MacBook and you already have like an iPhone or something, the value kind of increases even more so the deeper you get into the ecosystem, at least in my estimation. Having said all that, if I were to say that I would trade or sell my iPad Pro just to have one of these, I don't know that I don't know that I want to do that, because to be honest, like, the main reasons that I use my iPad Pro for video editing and occasional surfing, not very much, but mostly video editing, aren't terribly better on here. Now, it is true I will be able to grow into Final Cut Pro and be able to do more as time goes on, but for the here and now, I probably shouldn't have bought this. I don't think I needed this. Having said that, if someone were to ask me, is it a good buy, especially for someone who needs a new laptop, I would say absolutely yes. Now, the big difference is Windows versus Mac OS. If you are a big gamer and play a lot of games, this is just not the laptop for you. I mean, let's be real. While there are ways to play games on this, it's not what you're looking for. But for so many people, this is literally the laptop you need. It really is a great deal, a great value, performs really excellently, and the operating system, despite some of the things that I'm not super excited about, is still really good. So weirdly, even though I don't need this, and if I had to do it over again, I may not buy it, I don't necessarily want to get rid of it. And certainly if someone, again, asked me to recommend it, I totally would. But tell me, if you're looking for a new laptop, what kind of laptop are you looking for? Leave me a comment below. I'm just going to tell you, try out a MacBook Air, go to one of the Apple stores and check it out. It's actually pretty cool. Have some other videos right here and here. Make sure you check them out, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love.